Hi guys, and welcome to Crime Don't Pay podcast with Honey Pal. Today's guest, we've got Jay. I'll let you introduce yourself for those who don't know.
Hello, honey. Thanks for having me. And my name's Jay, and I'm a addict in recovery. Just temporary back in the UK at the minute, waiting to go back to Thailand in a couple of days. Yeah.
I want to start your story from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
What was your life like growing up?
So my life growing up, I was from a working class background. You know, I had whatever I wanted as a child. I had a younger brother. I've still got a younger brother. And yeah, I think from a young age, I'm still a mummy's boy. And I was severely bullied in school, the long and short of it. And then as I grew up, you know, I found myself in different schools, trying to be Jack the lad. And I remember just being then the one that was always in trouble, full of fear, didn't get on with the cool kids, got on better with girls. And then, yeah, as I grew up, I didn't like school, you know, and I fell into, I've spoke about this before, but I basically started going around with the older generation that were into crime because it was where I felt accepted. But looking back, I was more groomed because I thought that they had my back. You know, I'd go to any lengths to please them. Not worrying about the consequences, basically, involved drug-induced and alcohol-induced as well, going through that.
I find that a lot with older people and stuff. They tend to get younger people because they're more naive to it at that age as well,
Yeah,
which is wrong.
for sure.
With the bullying, how did that affect you? I used to get bullied when I was younger. It'd be about my weight and stuff. It was awful. And it still has effects on me to this day. I still feel insecure if I wear something that shows my body a bit too much and stuff. Would you say it still has an effect on you?
It doesn't have an effect now, but it certainly played a role in my substance and alcohol abuse growing up, because I remember my first line of cocaine at 15, and I remember taking that alongside drinking, and I just felt like I could take on the world. You know, so I just turned into someone that wasn't me. The substances took me out of me, and from a young age of 15, I was drug dealing throughout my childhood and upwards, and they were fun. You know, I loved it. They took me out. They gave me confidence, but it definitely stemmed from not feeling enough, not being enough, and a low self-worth from bullying, definitely. So it had a part to play, but it doesn't affect me today through the work that I've done.
Did you have anyone telling you, no, that's wrong, going down that kind of route at such a young age? Do you have a role model?
Oh, yeah, my parents, they inspire me to this day. You know, my mum and all my loved ones were anti-drugs. They don't drink, they don't take substances. They were always, everyone around me was telling me they're bad, but I think as a teenager and a young man, you don't listen to what anyone's telling you because, well, if you're like me, I thought that I knew best. And I thought, well, I'm going to live how I want and do what I want, you know. And we were speaking about it earlier, you know, and about just to raise a bit of awareness on knife crime. You know, for me, carrying a knife at a young age was the norm for me. You know, I'd never thought, looking back, of the consequences if I'd have ever, you know, got in serious jail time for it. But it was if I knew that they had that on me, you know, then I knew that I would be stronger and one of the lads as such, you know. And I urge that because think about the consequences when you've got that on you, you're more likely to use it. If you haven't got it on you, then you haven't got that option to go through, you know. And I scream that from the rooftops. Yeah, I've been stabbed twice. I've been bottled. I was involved in active addiction. I was involved with I hit someone with a hammer, and then I left him out. The insanity. I say this not to glamorize it, but how I'm still alive today, I don't know. I call it God. But yeah, and then I remember leaving this person on the floor, thinking that he was bleeding out, 27 stitches in his head. And I was running away in broad daylight with old people and people around. And I threw the hammer in a bush. And then I woke up in a hospital bed with a broken jaw and eye socket, and a handcuff to a bed by police. And it turns out that he actually ran and got that hammer and come up behind me without me knowing. But again, I saw him at the time. The reason I did that was because I saw him run past an apartment with a machete. So my first instinct was, I'm not going to hide from him. I'm going to go out, but I'm going to have a tool on me as well at the same time, you know. And then from me making that choice, someone said to me that there's always a price to pay and a bill to pay. If you're willing to accept the consequences and pay the bill, then it's always down to the choice of that person. So yeah.
How come you hit him with the hammer? What was?
It was over drug dealing. He wanted to rob me for my supply. I wanted to rob him for his, and then I got set up by what I thought was a friend to run up on me in an apartment, and I managed to look at the window, and I saw this gentleman running up the road, putting a machete behind a sign with a girl to then get me come through the door. And then because I'd seen him do that and realised I was being set up, I then acted out beforehand in fear, and I thought, well, if I get to him first, then he's not going to get to me.
See, I find that disgusting. Anyone who can set anyone up is just, I don't understand that. What message would you give, like, for the viewers watching and like the younger generation? What advice would you give them about knife crime?
All I can say is, if you're willing to pay the price for one split decision for a reputation, think about it seriously, because the only one that will suffer like I did in the long run is you. And it's always down to choice, you know. Don't pick them knives up and then you won't have the consequences, you know. And it's about, like, who you put yourself around as well is a big thing, you know. Don't think that everybody's your friend. I thought I had thousands of friends growing up, but I realised we were just associates. You know, it was, they didn't have my back. And then when I'm in prison, I was left on my own, you know, and then people crack on with their life and I'm stayed stuck in the same environment and surroundings. And I'm the one suffering. But again, there's no one else to blame but myself, you know. But I urge anybody and I know it's a lot more, now with these zombie knives that I see on TV, you know, and the reality is you're doing 20, 30-year sentences. Your whole life's thrown away just to prove one point in one silly situation that can cost you your whole future and also take away someone's loved one, you know, and it's a brutal thing. And just remember that you've got a choice and it's always good. There's that saying, isn't it? That be the wolf, not the sheep. You know, and do things differently. But
That's,
again,
one thing people need to realise as well, if you do pick up a knife and you do that, it's not just that person you're harming everyone around them, like their friends, their family. It has like a big toll, and like 9 times out of 10, it's always over something stupid or silly that could have been resolved with like a conversation or something.
For sure.
Let's talk about your time in prison.
Yeah.
What was your first initial feeling that you had when you first went in?
So when I was in young offenders, I was happy to go at the time, because I thought I can be one of the lads now, and this is the cool thing. And as I say, there was an incident where I remember realising reality hit when I was in a showers, showering. We touched on it before, but I know this is a separate interview. And basically there was a ginger lad, and I remember his hair. I can't remember what he looked like, but I just remember him being ginger. And he came in and nodded at me, and he was in the cubicle next to me. And 2 people came running up into the cubicle to rush him, obviously jump him. And he was obviously had a shank on him. And I just remember hearing screams and this noise, and my feet being covered in blood that was coming under the cubicle. And it turns out that he stabbed them over 20-something odd times. And that was when reality hit, like, what am I doing here? Am I going to survive? You know, I was a Sussex boy in a London jail, gang affiliated, with no postcode. And I was like the minority, you know, I was like pickings easily for anybody to build a reputation up in there. So instantly I had to condition changing my thinking, because if I didn't retaliate and act out back, that I was going to be in serious problems by not defending myself.
That must have been so scary because you feel like you have to watch your back like
Oh,
constantly and stuff.
For sure. In young offenders, it's one of the young offenders are the most dangerous prisons in the UK. I'm a big believer of that. You know, everyone's got a point to prove. Everyone wants to earn a reputation. Everyone's got a postcode. You know, there's not really any worry about consequences because all of the circle and the people in there are doing the same thing, you know. But as I say, then from that sentence, I'll be honest, from me going into adult prison sentences, nothing really bothered me. I built associations in there. I became one of the lads in the prison system on the wing, made friends. I used it as a networking tool to make more contacts, to then commit more organised crime when leaving, you know. And then I would go in and out of prisons to get clean and stop the lifestyle, but then come out and do exactly the same things, which is the definition of insanity. It's repeating the same behaviours, expecting a different outcome, you know, and that was what I did. But again, I at that time, through periods of my life, prison definitely saved my life, because there was many a times where if I'd have carried on, I wouldn't have been here now, through incidents, as I say, being stabbed, shot at in broad daylight in Birmingham New Street, over an incident where I was out all night. And I don't say this to glamorise it, honey, but this is the insanity. I was with a girl who was a stripper. She knew the doorman. He slapped her bum walking into this club. Straight away, I'm like, that's a disrespect. I've gone in with attitude towards him. 2 gang members from a gang, which I don't want to speak about, in Birmingham, then put it on me because they knew him. I've then retaliated, bust one of their noses. I've come out of Riley's snooker club, walked past TGI's shop window, and a car drove past me and shot a gun. And half a minute, all I remember is a traffic warden screaming, "You've been shot, you've been shot." And I was so off my head, I didn't realise, and I've turned round, and about half a metre off my head, they shot out the TGI shop window. And it was an attempt on my life from a stupid, drug-fuelled situation where my life could have ultimately been ended. And I had to then ring my people that I was connected with to squash this situation because it was heated. And luckily, it sort of faded out. I mean, One-Eye Baz, who's unfortunately passed away now, God rest his soul, he was one of the ones that was very anti-street crime, and he would do interventions on people at war on the streets to help kill it and squash it. And then he had an intervention on that to get it put to bed and let everybody move on so it didn't continue into other problems and beef or whatever, violence in the long run, you know. So yeah, there was many incidents that I was in, and my last one was 3 years, 5 days ago, where I was driving my Porsche home drunk, and the police went to pull me over, and I just put my foot down, and I was at the point, I'd been to rehab, come out, didn't change my attitude and behaviours. I ended up relapsing. I was so felt guilt, shame, embarrassment. And I just remember being in that car thinking, if I don't make it out of this car, I'm going to be all right. I'll need to be at peace. I was living in hell in between my head. And I actually rolled my car at 100 and something miles an hour 5 times. It took them 4 hours to cut the roof off. And then it took them 8 hours to build a metal rod and plates in my leg, where I had 12 fractures, broken back and ribs. And that's where the addiction took me in the end. And thank the grace of God, whatever God is, again, I know it's not me. I took my recovery seriously, and that's why I'm so passionate and willing to help others in all walks of life to maybe help them to make change. You know, I don't have to run into a burning building like firemen to save someone's life, but by staying clean and sharing my message, it gives a hope to the ones that are out there still suffering and viewing, you know.
Yeah, that must have been a really like traumatic experience to have. Would you say that made you a bit scared to get in cars after for like a while?
No. I think the thing that was really hit my ego on that was the fact that I couldn't walk for a period of time. I couldn't go to the toilet on my own. I had carers at my house, which took away my pride. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do anything for myself, which I'd always been able to do. But what it did, it learnt me to sit with myself, take responsibility for my recovery, use what they taught me in rehab, and then really apply it and take it seriously, which I did. You know, I took on the suggestions. I did everything that they tried to tell me to do before, but I still wasn't aware that I had a drug problem. You know, I wasn't. I had a me problem. I thought just because I wasn't drinking and taking coke anymore that I was all right. But what I know with a recovery is if you don't have a program for someone like me and connection and fellowship, ultimately I can get really ungrateful, really selfish, self-centered, self-pity, pour me another drink. And I end up drinking. And it's funny because I actually relapsed. The build-up was on steroids and non-alcoholic beer. And the reason they're non-alcoholic beers is for non-alcoholics. But for someone like myself who's an addict, alcoholic, they're not for us, you know. And I, before I know it, I remember someone saying to me, I drank 8 bottles of non-alcoholic beer in an hour. And someone said to me at the time, would you drink 8 glasses of Coke in an hour? And the reality is, no, I wouldn't. So I set off what I now know and teach people is I set a phenomenon of craving off, which was a reservation, trying to fit in like others and not look like I'm boring. But then it's set off because I always put alcohol and cocaine together. And then now what I've learned is for those watching that when you drink alcohol and take cocaine, your body actually then will crave a chemical called cocaine, which a lot of people don't realise. Cocaine is a mix of alcohol and coke together. So I couldn't ever drink alcohol and not take coke. So ultimately, if I'm drinking non-alcoholic beer, that set off a craving for me to want to go back to coke, and that's when it reset my addiction all over again. And it got worse. As I say, I was in the horrors because I knew that I'd had a period of time clean out of rehab. My mum funded it towards the end because I'd lost my bar. I was about to lose my big house, and I lost my business, and I had no way out. And but thankfully, I'd had that experience to go, I know what I need to do now. I was in a hospital bed nearly dying, and I remember being at peace.
Was that your final turning point to think, no, I need help?
Just for today, yeah. I need help. I can't do this on my own. And the non-alcoholic beer didn't work. The steroids didn't work. So now I need to really work on what the problem is me and my spirit, and myself, and make change. And as I say, I went out my way to do that. My first year of recovery, I was even in my crutches, travelling all over the UK for various charities. You know, a lot of people say who take substances, they say that they're bored, honey. But my answer, if you're saying you're bored, it's because you're being fucking boring. If you go and start practicing doing something for someone else, then you will be selfless rather than being selfish about being bored. So I was going all over the country helping disability children at farms, old people, and I was doing that as well as my recovery stuff. And then before you know it, days turned into months and months turned into years. And I'm here today living a life beyond my wildest dreams through the effort and the action that I took, you know. And yeah, I'm blessed today, you know, to be where I am. So
it's good doing things for like charity and stuff, because if you was already going through all that with like therapy and stuff and you wanted to make yourself a better person, I feel like doing that helped you feel like more of a better person.
Yeah.
It's like when you see like a homeless person on the street, if you have the change and you give it to them, you feel like you've helped them in a way and it makes you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, purpose.
Would you say that helped with your recovery as
Massively. In addiction, the one thing that we lack in an active addiction is purpose. So the minute that I can plant seeds, I call it, in someone else's life, or I see the lights come on, or someone says, Jay, you've helped save my life. I'm only where I am today because of you. I say, no, it's not because of me. I carried a message. You've made the action and made the effort. All I've done is share my experience, strength and hope. But I don't take credit for anyone. their recovery. That's unto their efforts that they've made. But I'm here to, I believe that I'm a messenger now. I carry a message. I share my experience, strength and hope. And it's up to others if they want to do that and go down that journey, you know. Purpose, as you said, yeah. Feel good. It gives you a dopamine hit that is a natural one.
What made you get into your addiction? Like, was there anything growing up or that made you get into it?
I lacked confidence. I didn't believe in myself. I was scared of life. You know, I didn't feel like I fitted in. I had no confidence. As I say, the bullying had a part in it. I won't say it wouldn't. But ultimately, yeah, then it was just to fit in, and because the people I was going around with were doing it. And it was, as I say, I love drugs. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't. I love drugs and alcohol. The difference is I can't stop once I start. I can't handle the consequences, and I can't use them successfully. So that's why I don't pick up today. Thing with addiction, if you're an addict alcoholic, you haven't got power. So that's why you haven't got willpower, because otherwise if you could stop on your own, then you would, you know. And for me, as I say, it got progressive, but I would end up in hospital beds, as I say, prisons, rehab, you know, loss of jobs, lying for jobs, you know. And I've spoken about this before, but my nan must have died at least 3 or 4 times in active addiction because I run out of excuses to phone in sick for work. And it sounds terrible, but that is where drugs and alcohol took me. You know, I wouldn't care about anyone or the consequences or who I harmed around me. You know, all I cared about was justifying, using excuses, living in denial to carry on. Yeah, so it was just a cycle, as I say, an endless cycle. But yeah.
The worst thing I feel like with addiction is that you don't realize that it's an addiction that you've got until it's like too late. And then when you are kind of going down the rabbit hole and someone says to you, like, you have like an addiction, you don't want to hear it. You're like, I can quit when I want. Do you kind of feel like that?
I used to, but then I realised through the pain, when the pain got so great that I couldn't. You know, I used to justify it, and I get what you mean with the rabbit hole, but ultimately, if people watch this and can identify, there is a choice there. So you have got the choice to make change or carry on. You know, there's a saying that I always say, honey, and it's saying the dealers and the bars aren't going anywhere. Give yourself a break. Try this stuff for 90 days or go to rehab with us over in Helena in Thailand, right? Try something new. If you don't like it and your life don't change, go back to the dealers and the bars because they're still there. But why not give yourself a break and trying something different before leaving it too late? You follow? So there's always a choice behind that. As I say, for me, I needed to be took out of rehab, out of the world to go into rehab. And I was luckily enough, my parents funded it. And it didn't offer them nowhere near the amount of what we offer with therapy, somatic work, tune in, mind, body and spirit in Thailand. I wish that I'd gone to Thailand for my rehab because I might have got it the first time, but I didn't, and that's okay. You know, what I do now is urge people, to just try looking out at support and not have a look on meetings like focusing on, oh, I'm now in an AA or a CA or an NA meeting. Like, don't worry about the meeting. Worry about what's brought you there. You know, and look for the hope in the rooms. If it's working for others, then it can work for you.
How many times did you go to rehab?
Once.
Once.
Mm.
What would you say to people out there who are listening and they're trying to get some help with it and are like thinking about relapsing and stuff?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, the thing is with the relapse, if you don't come into recovery, ultimately you're going to relapse, you're going to use because nothing's changing. If you come into recovery and get clean and stay clean and then relapse, get back into the solution where it works. We don't judge people or turn our backs on anyone. If you've messed up, use that, grow from it, and then step it up, do more. You know, if you haven't been to rehab, just ask the questions. I've got my Instagram and TikTok link, which is JUST4TOJAY. You know, I always respond to anybody that's struggling that needs a helpline or meetings in their area or information on our treatment centre in Thailand. You know, I built a platform on social media through doing this. And I'm proud of that, you know, because sometimes people don't get this information, but with social media and podcasts, people can sit and really identify and learn, and then something might stand out to them to go, you know what, I can look and pursue this and maybe do some research and try it before I leave it too late. Because you don't have to. I'm not proud of going to prison. I'm not proud of the crimes and violence that I committed. If I could turn back the clock, would I? On some of the charges that I've been done for, yeah, I would. Yeah, because I put my family through hell. But would I change a lot of my mistakes and life? No, because ultimately what I did has got me to where I am today, you know. And I get asked that a lot. Would you turn back the clock? Well, that's a fantasy. You know, you can't turn back the clock. You've got to either live with it, get on with it, grow with it, or sit in it, dwell in it, and cry about it in self-pity, blaming everyone else. But ultimately, you're only going to get older, and you know that there is a way out.
I feel like you're very brave for being able to talk about your story. And I've also seen a few of your TikToks and stuff where you talk about recovery and stuff. And I think it's really nice because people out there who need like help and stuff, they can view that and then it will help people out there like a lot with it.
Yeah.
What has your time been like out in Thailand?
Oh, I've loved it. So I was originally traveling the world, traveling Asia, blessing people children in orphanages. I blew up on TikTok and started making money on social media.
What is blessing people? Sorry to cut
blessing,
you off.
so it's doing good deeds to the less fortunate.
Okay.
And then I ended up creating a platform on there. And one of my dreams was to live in hotels and travel. And I got to a point where I was doing that and I felt so lonely and at dis-ease living on social media, traveling to all these hotels and countries, that eventually I met someone who owns Holina in Thailand, and two good friends of mine, Richard, the clinical manager, and Ian, that's one of the directors. And they said, we'd like to give you an opportunity to come over to Thailand, to come over this part of Thailand and do some volunteering, which I did. Leading up to it, funny, the selfishness of my illness, it was like, I'm going to lose out on making money. But I did it anyway. I thought, don't make it all about you. You've been given an opportunity, go and do it. And then I did a few months volunteering there, did some other training and courses on trauma awareness, life support saving, other training, and as well as what I know in recovery. And it ended up turning into a full-time career with a beautiful place to live. And my residency visa now, and I've just ended up staying there. And yeah, I've got a great life in Thailand. I miss my little boy of 13, who I've just spent time with being back. But I know that he's got a best version of his dad right now doing what I'm doing, you know. And when you touched on something earlier, and I fully believe if you enjoy doing it, it's not work. You know, if you enjoy doing something and are passionate about it, it isn't work, man. We get to do things in life. We haven't got to do anything. You know, I get to do this stuff. I haven't got to. If I want to sit in bed and watch Netflix and porn all day with the curtains drawn, then I can. But then at the end of the day, if I'm then going, I've had a really shit day, well, what have you done with yourself in that day? There's no one else again to blame but me. You know, so I always hold myself accountable now and check myself before I wreck myself. Because if I don't, ultimately I'm going backwards and not forwards. And it's quite easy. I know you're not an addict, but addiction, can manifest in any area for me. It can manifest in binge watching Netflix all day and night. It can binge in eating or not eating. It can binge in shopping late at night. I don't know if you can relate, where I'm buying pointless shit on my phone. My dopamine's going ding, 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 ding. I've spent loads of money. I get this stuff in the post and I'm like, why did I buy all this shit that I don't need? What that is it's an addiction where you're feeding a dopamine level. So it's about practicing doing things differently. So one thing with that, for those that are watching, is I'll put stuff in my basket for 2 days. And the likelihood is I'm trying to buy stuff to make me still feel better internally, but nothing external will fill an internal void, you know, because we're always looking for the nice car, the bigger followers, with this. But if you make that your purpose in life, you will never be happy. So I've learnt to now condition the internal and just try and do the best thing for the right reason. And I can fall short, as I say. I can fall back. I do gratitude lists so often, 10 things to be grateful for. That's a great one to get out of the head, especially with anxiety. Writing, today I've got anxiety, I'm grateful. Today I've got food on the table. Today I've got a clean bed. Today I'm grateful. And it's just little things trying to change the thinking behind it,
Yeah.
and learn to live with it rather than put it in a box. And there's a saying, right? You can't think yourself out of a thinking problem. So what does that mean? Well, I can sit in story in my head, thinking this, thinking that, and thinking I know best, or I can try do things differently within my action.
Yeah. Was it hard? Because obviously, you're good at like self-reflection and stuff. Was it hard turning your life around from living like a life of crime and stuff to being where you are now?
At first I was worried because I had to cut a lot of people off. There was threats on my life for information that I knew, that people thought I was going to grass them up. So there was I owed money to certain people. I walked away from certain people and things that I was up to illegally. I thought that I was going to lose a lot of friends, but now looking back over 3 years ago, I realised they weren't friends. They were just associates. The only thing we had in common was doing illegal activity and taking cocaine and drinking, going to strip clubs, going to wherever. And yeah, now I realise in recovery, I've got true friendships, true people that want me to win, and I want them to win, and we help each other. So it was hard at first because it was different. I was changing things, but now looking back, don't regret it. Best thing I ever did. And I'm grateful I got to do that.
Yeah, I feel like you do lose a lot of friends like along the way and stuff. Especially if you made friends whilst you was kind of in a bad place and now you're in a good place, they kind of don't. Some people don't like grow with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I use, and I heard it saying, some people are in your life for a season or a reason. And what I don't do, honey, in life, if people distance from me and I've kept my side of the street clean, I don't try and fight for their people's friendships. I just go that. And then new people will come into my life. They might come in for a short time or a long time, but always, as long as I know that my morals and my side of the street's clean, I don't hold myself accountable for what anyone else's choices or what decisions and paths they make. And you outgrow people in life. And look back at the ones that I've lost along the way, I've got nothing. We're in a totally different space. We're not doing the same things. We're not changing. They haven't got anything to have conversations with. That's the truth. I'm like, I don't really relate to these people no more because I've outgrown them, or I'm just doing different things and took different paths. And then I get blessed with new people, new associations, new friendships. And I've got friends, 2 or 3 from I've had years. We don't see each other all the time, where we're not up each other's arses day in, day out. But we know that we're at the end of the phone, and when we get a chance, we'll meet up, and we've got each other's backs if you need to talk to each other and whatever else. And I think that's just the circle of life. I don't need to beg for a friendship or what I used to do is always, maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe it's me. Maybe I should have done this. Listen, shoulda, coulda, woulda, didn't. Who cares, man? Just keep going. That's it. Just keep going. And that's where you just learn then. As I say, sometimes people, and like ex-relationships I've had, my ex-girlfriends, I've got no resentment towards them. They all taught me something. The ones I cheated on, the ones that in active addiction, they all taught me something and were chapters in my life. And I can either go back into a relationship knowing that it's done, but my head will go, I really miss her. No, it's okay to miss someone. Doesn't mean they're supposed to be in your life. This is a new chapter now. Or you can go back to the same relationship, but then wonder why it doesn't work. And it's all life lessons, man, and experiences. It's like you either grow together or you don't, man. It's like,
See, I really relate to like what you're saying. I'm a very forgiving person. So I feel like with friendships and stuff, like I do look back and I think, oh, was I in the wrong? But I know that I've got the right morals and I wouldn't go and like treat anyone badly kind of thing. It's not in me to do that. So with friendships now, if we have a falling out or something, I just don't bother because I don't see the point in going back and forward and then, like you said, fighting for a friendship that you don't need.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, as you get older, you just cut ties. I've got a circle of friends, but it's very small than what it used to be. Like there's not many people classify as like my friends.
I think the smaller the circle, the better and more you succeed. That's my thing. You know, I don't need thousands of friends to get through life. I know whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be all right. You know, if I've woken up today and I'm all right, you know, there's a statistics of 60 odd thousand people that don't get to wake up for unknown circumstances every single day. So if you think there's 60,000 people worldwide that didn't wake up today, this morning, but I've woken up, and that's what I'm grateful for. You know, there's gratitude. I always preach gratitude is the breakfast for champions, man. As long as you stay grateful in life, you will succeed. You know, you will do well, but you have to believe in yourself, as I said to you earlier. You know, it's a form of people pleasing. You know, when we're all sorry. Listen, man, no one's right or wrong. I'm not causing harm. But that's something that I used to do all the time. I'd always apologise for things because I would go, maybe I've upset. I'd do their thinking for them. And that's a defect of character, doing other people's thinking. You know, so it's like, okay, maybe I can learn through that and make change in that area. And it's like, oh, the only thinking I can do is my own. I can't do someone else's. You know, have you ever had it where you walk into a room full of people and you think everyone's looking at you?
Yeah.
So there's self-centeredness. Because what makes me feel so special to think that everyone in that room is looking at me, but then my anxiety will start to come out. Okay, well, let's have a breath. You've got a bit of anxiety. It's a busy area, but not everyone's looking at you, mate. You're not that important. And I will tell myself that, and then I work through that anxiety in that moment. And it's all part of being human, learning new tools and skills.
Yeah, that's a good way of dealing with it. It's like when I go out, like I tend to keep my head down because I feel too scared to like look at people like as people walking past. Because if I make eye contact with them, I feel like they're looking at me and I don't like it. Whereas if I keep my head down, but they're not looking at me and I'm not looking at them, it's all right.
That's called self-obsession. So it's because you're so self-obsessed in your head and your thinking that you're telling yourself a story. So Honey will tell herself a story and then believe it. But the reality is, that's not fact or reality. That's your thinking.
Yeah.
So how can I change my thinking in them situations? And it's practicing new skills and tools to help develop you and yourself. You know, and I used to always be I'm still a bit self-obsessed. You know, I like to wear nice things. I like to do this, but that's called self-care as well. But I'd always be checking myself in windows, checking myself in mirrors. You know, like, fucking hell, give yourself a break, Jay. You're all right. Do you know what I mean? And I've had to learn through certain things to make change and grow. And it's all self-development, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd like to go back really quickly to what you said earlier. You said you were stabbed twice. Do you want to explain that a little bit? And get
That
into
was
the
just,
story?
it was just caught up. So basically, I was stabbed once with someone of my older generation. He went into a crack psychosis and he was known for stabbing people. And I was 16 at the time. And I saw that there was a knife on the kitchen side and I remember it. And I put the knife under the microwave and he looked at me in a psychosis and thought that I was going to stab him. So he took the knife and stabbed me in my leg. And I had to wrap a Burberry scarf at the time was in trend. And I remember, well, actually before that, then I was screaming. And one of my other elders came in having a go at him. And then it was actually a traumatic experience for me looking back because he said, Jay, stab him in each leg. And I went, what do you mean? And he said, stab him in each leg now. And this bloke was he was a nasty piece of work, this geezer. Like, you didn't fuck about with him. And he then was looking at me like that, going, stab me back in both legs so I can forgive myself. And I swear, the fear in me, I was like, I can't do this. I felt sick. And in the end, I did it. I plunged him in both legs. He wrapped himself up. I wrapped a Burberry scarf around my leg. And I remember it like yesterday. I walked to the local hospital where my mum worked. And my mum was the one that actually stitched me up. And she said, what have you been doing? And I said, I jumped a barbed wire fence and cut my leg. You know, but again, I chose to put myself with them people in them situations. And the other one was in a drunken fight. I got stabbed in the head with a bottle. That was actually someone that I knew beat his girlfriend up. And again, because I was trying to always be a superhero, I then weighed him in, and then someone else from behind put a bottle in my head, again in a drunken cocaine state. You know, I don't say that out of ego. I don't want everyone to think, oh, look, he's going. I just say these are the decisions and choices that I made without thinking of consequences, all wrapped up in that lifestyle, you know, and that's the insanity of addiction. As I said, repeating the same behaviours and taking substances, expecting a different outcome. You know, so now what I practice living is insanity rather than insanity, insane thinking, which addiction is rife with.
Going back to the guy that you said with psychosis that did that, I feel really like bad for anyone who does suffer with psychosis because they don't understand like what they're doing, and then the next day the guilt kind of takes over them, and that's when it kicks in. So I think him telling you to stab him was him, and he said it so I can forgive myself, because I feel like he'd probably wake up the next day or something, or when he's out of it, and he's going to feel really, really guilty about it and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel for people with that. I think there is tablets you can take, but it's
The thing with the gentleman, I mean, I don't want to go into too much, but it was all through drug psychosis. So again, it's all the choice. You know, I've had psychoses myself where I was a big marijuana grower. So I used to have grow houses set up in certain areas of the UK, and I would take cocaine and alcohol, and I would sit in the loft with a bat, thinking that the people were coming down to rob my grow, and I would remember sitting in the loft in a psychosis, getting covered in insulation and looking down, thinking that people were coming to rob me or the police were coming, sniffing on my own in the loft, protecting a house worth of plants, 250, 300 plants, you know, but whose decision was that? It was mine. Whose choice was that? It was mine. So because I didn't know there was a way out, and I know a lot of people watching, when you get into curtain twitching, doing laps around the house, you think the police are coming. The guy was always watching over my back for the police, you know, because of the lifestyle I was leaving. So therefore, my cocaine psychosis would always take me into severe paranoia, you know, severe paranoia, pacing around the house, chatting shit about prison, talking to people. I'd wake up with 5 lighters in my pocket, no sleep for 2 days, 100 numbers on my phone, and I'd never speak to them people again. You know, it was just fakeness, but that was all down to my choice. It's what I was doing.
So you said about the psychosis with looking out the window and stuff. Do you feel like the weed played a part in that as well? I feel like when people first start smoking, it does become like the whole personality for like a little while when they first start out.
Yeah, well, weed's a social drug, and I see a lot of people say, listen, what works for some people might work for them. It's chemically this, it's good for you for this, it's good for you for that. I don't judge, you know, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of chemicals in the weed these days, and I've got family members that are heavy weed smokers, and it does affect them mentally. But again, I don't judge. You do what you've got to do. You know, it's down to every person's choice, man. I used to do all of that, so I certainly don't judge people for making that decision. If it works for you, cool. I used to use weed just to get through the day, and then I'd be partying on the night. So I was just substituting one drug for another. You know, I couldn't just smoke weed and not drink alcohol. I couldn't just drink alcohol and not take coke. I had to have it all, because all I ever wanted was more. You know, so.
Yeah, I feel like they say certain stuff, like they say weed helps with anxiety. I feel like it makes it worse. Same with alcohol. They say alcohol helps with it, but then the next day you wake up and some people like the nickname is like anxiety the next day when you're hungover and you've got the anxiety. I feel like all these things are like a temporarily fix, and then without facing the actual real issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, you know what works for some might not work for others. Again, if you're a weed smoker and you're all right with it, your life's all right and you enjoy it and you've got control over it, fucking smoke it. I probably would if I could. If I could have a couple of beers down the pub, I would. You know, if I could just have a fucking half a gram of it, I would. But I can't, and I have to always look at my own experience and my own story, not to get caught up in what might work for Tom, Dick and Harry, and then think that I'm like Tom, Dick and Harry, because every single person's different. You know, everyone is different. Everybody reacts, changes different ways. But yeah.
How long have you been clean for, if you don't mind me asking?
3 years and 5 days abstinence, from everything. So yeah, and it's one day at a time. The journey will continue.
Yeah, we should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, I am. I am proud of myself today, you know, and I've got a purpose, and I'm grateful for that. So.
What are like some things that you want for your future?
I don't. I got asked this the other week, and you know, I've got goals. I'd like to down the line have my own rehab probably, but really it's just keeping it in the day and just keep going with what I'm doing and growing in areas, you know, and seeing what happens. More will be revealed, more will unfold, ups and downs, mistakes I'm sure I will make along the way for sure. And relationship breakups, it's all just life on life terms, but I know that I don't have to pick up to get through it, you know, I'll just keep going forward. So
Have you got anything that you want to speak about?
no, I think that's it. I think we're about on time, aren't we? I think I'm grateful for you having me on here. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best for your journey and continuing. And yeah, I'll keep in touch with you. And yeah, just keep going. You know, believe in yourself. And yeah, we have to work for things in life. In my experience, if we don't work for it, we won't see results. So just keep going in it. Don't let anybody's opinions. Remember one saying, me ending this: opinions are like arseholes. They're full of shit. And we've got a lot of opinions in this world, but just keep doing what your vision is. Keep going for your goals and your dreams, and don't let no one's opinions try and sway you and doubt you.
Have you got anything to tell the viewers watching?
If you are struggling with addiction, you know, there is a way out. We do recover. And I'm always reachable and teachable on all of my social network, my social platforms. As I say, it's JUST4TOJAY. You can message me. I'm happy to give out any information on those to help anybody. As I say, but the only requirement to stop is a desire, you know, so yeah, don't do it. Don't try and do it on your own, and yeah, get connected to stay protected.
Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to hearing from you.
Cheers. Thank you.